Although at the moment it may look like the Mets are looking to retain their star closer Edwin Diaz before free agency, there still is a massive amount of arms to replace in the bullpen. These arms going to free agency include Trevor May, Joely Rodriguez, Adam Ottavino, Seth Lugo, Michael Givens, Trevor Williams, and Tommy Hunter. Although I do expect the Mets to fill those spots with a lot of veteran arms on one-year deals or one-and-one deals, the Mets' talent level in the minor leagues for potential relievers is at the highest it has ever been. Aside from the starting rotation, the Mets bullpen is definitely going to be one of the biggest question marks going into the offseason. Today, I've got 2 arms that we have seen a glimpse of and 4 arms that we have not seen in the majors yet. Here are 6 internal options for the 2023 Mets bullpen.
On 3-2, Vader. Swings and misses, strike 3. History.
Now, before I get into these options, I do want to mention a few arms that you can look forward to down the line in the next 1 to 2 years. They're just not on the full radar, but they're definitely arms to look out for in the minor league season next year. These arms definitely represent the 2021 draft class fairly well, as all of them have had quality to great first seasons in the minor leagues in 2022. This includes 2nd-round pick Calvin Ziegler, 3rd-round pick Dominic Hamill, 5th-round pick Kristen Scott, 8th-round pick Mike Vassell, 10th-round pick Keyshawn Askew, 4th-round pick in 2018 Brian Metoyer, and the nasty side armor with the rising slider Josh Heshka. If those 7 arms continue to progress, they definitely could be key pieces down the line to the Mets bullpen. All of them have incredible reliever ceilings. So let's get into our internal options for next season. First, let's start with a prospect that we saw briefly during this season, Jose Butto. He's 24 years old. He's currently ranked as the Mets' 15th overall prospect in the system. He made 1 appearance in a spot start this year. It didn't go the best, but aside from 2 really bad missed pitches, he really showed his overlying strengths in 4 innings of work. Butto has 3 pitches, but his best pitch is definitely his vertical enhanced changeup with low profile spin. He also has a clockwise dropping curveball with 2,500 to 2,600 RPM. It reminds me a lot of Twins reliever Jorge Lopez's curveball, a very predominant pitch for whiffs. Even though I do expect the Mets to develop him into a starter, he doesn't officially have a mastered fastball. It caps at about 94 to 95, but he could develop it out of the bullpen since it does have a tight tunnel and high active spin. Now, Butto does have a fly ball problem, but I do expect him to add maybe a sinker or a cutter, but he still does manage contact fairly well. It is very possible that he begins next season in AAA, where he pitched fantastic after his emergency call-up this year, but as a 2-pitch reliever, his changeup curveball duo could be a pretty good weapon out of the pen. Butto has starting pitcher stuff, but I just don't think it's fully there yet, but I think it definitely can get better. Now let's move to the second arm that we saw a glimpse of in the 2022 season, Bryce Montes de Oca. I've been a fan of this guy ever since he got drafted back in 2018 in the 9th round. He is a massive 6'7", 265-pound right-handed fireballer. He has a very ridiculous pitch mix. He has an explosive sinker that can reach up to 102 to 103 with a ridiculous tunnel, a zone-splitting cutter capping out at about 96 to 97, and those aren't even his best pitches in my opinion. Bryce also has this slurvy slider hybrid pitch with over 12 inches of horizontal movement. For those who love to track pitch characteristics, that is 135% above the league average slider. I know, ridiculous. But even with this explosive arsenal, he does have quite a walk problem, but it has gotten better within the last year or so. But this situation is extremely similar to someone else. An explosive arsenal, a trademark walk problem with ridiculous movement. This kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? Our pitching coach, Jeremy Hefner, has fared to do very well with sinker bowlers, so I'm expecting him to do his thing with this situation. He has a lot of potential to be a dominant reliever in this league. And that brings us to another flamethrower, which is Mikel Otañez. His future with the Mets will most likely be decided very soon, as his Rule 5 draft eligibility will be up this year. This is where I hope he replaces someone like Yohan Lopez for obvious reasons. Otañez is 25 years old, 6'4", 220 pounds, an international signing by the Mets in 2016 out of the Dominican Republic. Similar to Bryce Montes de Oca, Otañez establishes his dominance in one way: explosiveness, as he's been annually recognized with the best fastball in the entire Mets minor league system that consistently reaches 100 to 101 with an average 18 inches of vertical sink and late arm side action. He complements this with a horizontal heavy slider in the mid-90s, and he'll also add an occasional changeup, which he likes to use to induce soft contact against lefties. But I still do identify him as more of a two-pitch reliever. Otañez reminds me a lot of Orioles closer Felix Bautista, very over-the-top, aggressive follow-through with an explosive tunnel, but he can occasionally have a walk problem, which I believe is caused by his tendency to overthrow, which is why I think he's going to start next year in AAA to tweak his command a bit. As for the future, I'm really hoping that the duo of Bryce Montes de Oca and Mikel Otañez could develop into our future bullpen back end multiple years from now. These are two overly explosive fireballers that strike fear in the late innings. Montes de Oca and Otañez have the potential to be a very dominant duo. And that brings us to number 4 on this list, which is Grant Hartwig. This was an undrafted free agency signing by the Mets last year. He's 24 years old, 6'5", 240 pounds, coming off an incredible breakout year this season. In 56.2 innings pitched spread across each level of the Mets minor league system, Hartwig surrendered only 8 earned runs and struck out over 30% of batters combined out of the bullpen. He has a mid-90s fastball with ridiculous late sink, which leads to a ground ball rate over 60%. But his best pitch has to be his horizontal tunnel slider in the low 80s, which he throws at the same rate of his fastball. He also has a changeup in the mid-80s that he loves to freeze left-handed hitters with from changing different arm slots. His walk rates may be a little bit high for my liking, but I do blame it a bit on sample inflation and the fact that it's only 0.7% above the minor league average. His control is somewhat above average. He just happens to have the occasional command issues with his slider. He reminds me a lot of Hunter Strickland. Very similar horizontal arm slot, gets whiffs on his slider, manages contact with his late sinking four seam, and he's very changeup heavy against lefties. Now, I personally believe that Hartwig is one of the main reasons why the Mets should consider bringing back Michael Givens. It's because that ground ball tandem in middle relief would be very interesting considering how balanced and versatile both of those arms can be. Hartwig was one of the biggest breakout relievers in all of minor league baseball this year, and if you do want to see him pitch, he was just selected to the Arizona Fall League a few weeks ago. You better guarantee that he is definitely going to be on my prospects/players to watch list come the end of February. Hartwig is a solid arm who I cannot wait to see get a chance in the major leagues. Now we get to number 5 on this list, who is on the Mets 26-man roster for 24 hours here on out, but never got his shot, and that is Connor Gray. The Mets signed Gray as a minor league free agent last year. He's 28 years old, 6 foot, 180 pounds. He's a huge strike spammer with a mid-90s fastball. He has a low zone shifting slider with the occasional changeup, but his best pitch has to be his high-profile spin curveball with RPMs over 3,000. This is one of my ideal candidates to take the Trevor Williams role if he leaves in free agency, which I do think he will to get starting pitcher money. He can eat innings, he can spot start, and it gives you flexibility for emergencies. And I really do want the Mets to approach free agency with this type of depth in mind, which means stacking up on quality arms like Trevor Williams, and Connor Gray could be one of those pieces. And the final internal option on this list is someone that I was surprised did not get a chance in the major leagues yet. That is Josh Walker. You may notice that Josh Walker is the only southpaw on this list. Well, yeah, this is definitely not a point of emphasis for Billy Epler this offseason coming from me at all. Not at all. Josh Walker is 27 years old. He's a 6'6" lefty who the Mets selected in the 37th round back in 2017. This guy thrives on control and command with an upper 90s fastball and a late deception curveball. But my favorite thing about Walker is his changeup, or shall I say changeups. He has a vertically enhanced changeup and a horizontally enhanced changeup, which makes him more dangerous to both lefties and righties. I see a lot of similarities between Josh Walker and Jose Quintana. Both of them are control freaks looks to excel with command and contact management with simple mirrored mechanics. This is one of the main reasons why I think he will eventually become a major league starter. The only problem is that he hasn't been able to stay healthy to do that and has been limited by not being able to go deep into games. If the Mets do need a lefty arm, Josh Walker should definitely have a chance in the majors. He definitely has the type of skill set to be a dependable left-handed piece to this pitching staff. The only situation in the matter is him staying healthy.